ね。はい、それでは18番目のチーム、本当にいろんなジャンルに行きますね。東京学芸大学附属国際中等教育学校、チーム名がですね、医療提供の改善、テーマ名が Improvements on Providing Japanese Medical Services to Foreign Tourists。 どうぞ。
Imagine yourself visiting a foreign country where you do not understand the language at all, not even knowing how to read the words or understand the signs. At there, you got very sick or maybe injured yourself. What would you do? What would be your first action? This is a current status in Japan. We are high school students from Tokyo Gakuen University International Secondary School, and we have been researching about improvements on providing Japanese medical services to foreign tourists. We strongly believe that the information about medical service and medical institutions in Japan is not enough. Currently, 87.8% of hospitals in Japan cannot provide an acceptable level of medical services to foreign patients. Furthermore, in Japan, there are accreditation system called JIMEP, which provides institutions a neutral and impartial standpoint. By July 2019, only 65 medical institutions in Japan. By July 2019, only 65 medical institutions in Japan and 22 medical institutions in Tokyo were authorized as JIMEP. On the contrary, the number of tourists rises year on year, and by 2020, we expect to welcome 40 million visitors. This reality is a serious problem, and we think we could do something to solve this problem from a perspective of a high school student. So today, we would like to take this opportunity to make you aware of the medical issues tourists are facing and hopefully offer you some focus and solutions to the problem.
And next, I would like to explain what we have done from the past research and interviews that we approached to 5 different directions, which is a list above here. I'd like to explain this into 3 categories, which is the current situation, important points, and advice received for a pamphlet. So starting off with the current situation, there's many troubles and problems occurring right now, which makes it hard for the foreigners to undertake the same medical quality. For instance, medical trouble caused by language barrier could lead to patients to feel uncomfortable. Furthermore, unpaid medical expenses could bring problems between hospitals and patients as well. One of the hardest points for foreigners is to undertake the same medical quality and other 87.8%. Second, for important points we learned was understanding diversity. Always keep in mind that value towards the medical fields differ depending on individual. Therefore, to get rid of biased thought becomes vital. Also, providing accessible information such as internet or adding QR code on pamphlet would help tourists to reach accurate information easier. And third, advice we receive for a pamphlet is to emphasize the notice foreigners should know when taking medical examinations in Japan. Additionally, we need to make the pamphlet easier for the patient to have it talk with doctors about concern over language, religion, terms of payment, and so on.
Using this information, we are making the pamphlet that enable foreign patients to see a doctor more easily. There are 5 points we included in the pamphlet. First, how to find a hospital that matches patient condition. Second, introducing the steps of diagnosing system in Japan to clarify the difference between other countries. Third, we will provide a space for the patient to write down their own symptoms. Fourth, about things that patients should be careful about. By writing this, patient will be able to get to the hospital more easily. Lastly, we will list several social groups that can be useful for foreigners. For example, a group that have multilingual telephone translation services. By having such pamphlet at accommodations for foreigners, they would feel more familiar with Japanese medical services. We believe we can support foreign patients to see a doctor more easily with correct information.
And this is the draft version of the 3-fold pamphlet we are planning to make. Inside the pamphlet, there will be the 3 steps on how to receive medical service in Japan. So now I will briefly explain the steps. So everything starts with, ouch, I got a stomach ache and I need to see a doctor. And that's when you open this pamphlet. The first step will be how to find a hospital. You will need to read this QR code and jump to a website that has a multilingual medical questionnaire. This website enables you to find the clinic department that suits your symptom. Then, you choose the scale of the hospital based on your conditions. And the second step is how to see the doctor. At the hospital, you will need to complete your reception, wait for your turn, convey your symptoms to the doctor, and get the results. And finally, the third step. After the diagnosis, you will need to pay the money and get the prescribed medicine. And that is the diagnostic process in Japanese hospitals. And on the backside of the pamphlet, we included some specific information that also may be helpful for foreigners.
And now I would like to explain our prospect. First, we are planning to interview companies and institutions that foreigners may use during the visit, such as hotels, insurance companies, and clinics that do not have service for foreigners. Next, we will improve the draft of the pamphlet using advice from the interviews and try negotiating with hotels about installing our pamphlet in their facilities. We believe these activities will enable practical realization.
And lastly, Japanese hospitals have complicated diagnosing systems. There are multiple clinic departments such as surgery, eye, allergy, mental, and so much more. There are different scales of hospitals as well, and we often choose the scale depending on our symptoms, urgency, finance, and place. People living in Japan understand the system and know how to choose the right hospital. However, foreigners don't. Our aim is to enable foreigners to choose the hospital they wish to go and rely on Japanese medical services. In order to do so, it is necessary for us to understand the diagnosing system in Japan and make a pamphlet that introduces it concisely. And lastly, please imagine yourself once again as a foreigner visiting Japan, not knowing Japanese, but willing to see a doctor. Wouldn't it make a big difference if you had a pamphlet written in your own language that leads you to a hospital in Japan? And that is the kind of pamphlet we are trying to make. We, high school students, want to make a change, and this is why we are taking this action right now. Thank you for listening.
ありがとうございました。じゃあ斉藤先生どうぞ。
Thank you very much for the presentation. I really like your idea to solve the problem for people who are living in Japan or who are coming to Japan as tourists. And so I really like your idea to solve real problem which is happening right now. And so you mentioned that you have like a prospect for future research for your future project. And how long do you think it will take to complete finishing? Complete making the pamphlet. And I'd like to ask one more question. You said that the pamphlet should be available to tourists or to people from other countries. So how many languages of pamphlet are you going to make? These are the questions I'd like to ask.
So, as you saw in the draft, we wrote the draft in English, but we are planning to write it in other major languages that the visitors in Japan use, for example, Chinese and Korean. So if we translate the same content in that language, I feel like it's going to take a little more time. So we hope it's going to finish in this year. The pamphlet's going to finish in this year.
他いかがでしょうか。はい、クリス先生。
Usually when you, it's great that you want to train all the tourists that come to Japan. Good idea. But what about the hospitals? How will you train them? Because you have to train both sides, no?
We started with the tourist side because we were once a foreigner back. I used to live in America, she used to live in England, she used to live in America, and we used to live in foreign countries and experience the same thing that is happening with tourists in Japan right now. So we started with the tourists, and we hope we can approach to the medical side later on.
はい、吉健先生どうぞ。
I think it's a wonderful project. You might know this, but what Mr. Chris mentioned right now, there is a software at the present time where foreign patients can record their symptoms, and it is translated into Japanese. And it's being prepared now for next year, for the 2020 Olympics. So if you can put these two together, I think it will really come up with a very comprehensive system. And I think yours is a very good step in that direction.
Thank you.
May I ask what's the name of the application?
I don't know.
You don't know.
But it's made from by one of the professors at Sophia, my own university. And yet I don't know the
Please
name
Google
of the
it.
project. Right. I think you can look it up. It should come up. Okay.
Thank you.
ということでした。ありがとうございました。本当にこれ2020年来年のオリンピックの時までに間に合うといいですよね、これね。